I always thought Jake and I were the kind of couple everyone envied. We had a life that seemed pulled straight from a romantic movie, spontaneous weekend getaways, cozy nights with takeout and laughter, and the way he'd always hold my hand like he never wanted to let go. To everyone around us, friends, family, even strangers, we were perfect. Jake had this charm about him. His dark, wavy hair always looked effortlessly stylish, and his deep green eyes had a way of making you feel like the only person in the world when he looked at you. He was attentive, thoughtful, and had this quiet confidence that drew people to him. For years, I never questioned it. Why would I? He'd always remembered the little things, my favorite flowers, the exact way I liked my coffee, and how I'd hum to myself when I was nervous. But lately, things had shifted. It started subtly, like the faintest crack in a flawless mirror. Jake would come home later than usual, claiming he had extra meetings at work. He seemed distracted, his phone constantly buzzing with notifications that he'd quickly swipe away. Once or twice, I'd catch him smiling at something on his screen, only for him to lock it the moment I walked into the room. I brushed it off at first. Relationships go through phases, don't they? But as the days turned into weeks, that nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach grew stronger. Was I imagining things? Or was there something Jake wasn't telling me? Even though I tried to ignore it, the questions wouldn't leave my mind. What if I wasn't the only one Jake was holding hands with? It was a rainy Thursday evening when I found the first real crack in our perfect life. Jake was still at work, or at least that's what he'd said. I was curled up on the couch with a book, the rhythmic tapping of the rain against the windows, providing a soothing backdrop. I was reaching for my cup of tea when his phone buzzed on the coffee table. Jake hardly ever forgot his phone at home, so it caught me off guard. My eyes flicked to the screen, where a name I didn't recognize lit up. Marcus. Message preview read, "Can't wait to see you again. Friday works for me." My heart skipped a beat. Who was Marcus? And why was he so excited to see Jake? My hand hovered over the phone, torn between respecting his privacy and satisfying the burning curiosity clawing at me. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe it was just work related, but the tone of that message didn't feel professional. Before I could decide, the screen went dark, leaving me with nothing but my own swirling thoughts. When Jake came home that night, I couldn't bring myself to ask him. He was his usual charming self, making jokes about the rain and how he'd almost slipped on the subway stairs. I laughed along, but my mind kept circling back to that message. For the first time, I noticed how expertly Jake deflected any questions about his day. I'd always thought of it as him being private, not secretive, but now I wasn't so sure. As I lay awake that night, listening to the rain, I made a decision. If there was something going on, I had to know. The following day, I couldn't focus on anything. Work felt like a blur, and every free moment, I found myself replaying that message in my mind. Marcus, who was he? My curiosity had morphed into a gnawing need to know. When Jake left for his usual Friday late meeting, I felt a pang of unease. His phone buzzed again just as the door clicked shut behind him. This time I didn't hesitate. Unlocking his phone was easier than it should have been. I knew his passcode. My hands trembled as I scrolled through his messages. Most were mundane. colleagues, friends, family. But then I found the thread with Marcus. My heart pounded as I ran. The messages weren't explicit, but they were far too personal. Mentions of late night drinks, shared laughter, and plans for private dinners. Marcus wasn't just a colleague. The air in the room felt heavy as I sat back, my mind racing. Jake had always been the stable one in our relationship, the anchor I relied on. The idea of him leading a double life felt like a betrayal so profound I could barely breathe. When he came home that night, I tried to act normal, but every smile felt forced. Jake, ever perceptive, noticed. You okay? He asked, his brows furrowed in concern. I nodded too quickly, just tired. The guilt of knowing more than I let on was almost as suffocating as the betrayal itself. But now I had to decide what to do with the truth. Couldn't keep the charade up for long. The weight of it was too much. By Sunday evening, as Jake sat on the couch scrolling through his phone, I knew it was time. Jake, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but cold. He looked up, surprised. Sure, what's up? I hesitated for a moment, then dove in. Who's Marcus? The color drained from his face. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. Claire, I can explain, he started, but I cut him off. Explain what, Jake? That you've been lying to me? That you've been living some second life behind my back? My voice cracked, but I refused to let the tears fall. It's not what you think, he pleaded, leaning forward, his hands reaching for mine. I didn't mean for it to happen. Marcus, he's just someone I got close to. It was never supposed to go this far. I pulled my hands away, anger flaring in my chest. You think that makes it better? Do you have any idea what this feels like? He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I never stopped loving you, Claire. That's the truth. The room was silent, save for the sound of my shallow breaths. I didn't know what to believe anymore. His words felt hollow, and yet a part of me wanted to hold on to them. I need time, I said finally, standing up. I can't do this right now. I left the room before he could respond, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me like a storm cloud. The moment I walked out of that argument with Jake, I knew nothing would ever be the same. His words lingered in my mind, desperate, apologetic, yet unable to undo the damage he had caused. I spent the next few days sitting with my thoughts, replaying the last few years of our life together. There had been love, no doubt about it. But I realized now that I had been so focused on keeping us together that I had forgotten to ask myself if I was truly happy. One evening, I sat by the window in our apartment, staring out at the city lights. The thought of leaving terrified me. Where would I go? What would life look like without Jake? But another thought, quieter yet more powerful, began to take root. What if there's more waiting for me on the other side of this? The next morning, I packed my things. I wasn't impulsive about it. I made a plan, called a friend who offered me her guest room, and gave Jake one final letter. In it, I wrote, Jake, I loved you deeply. And for a time, I thought we had everything. But trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. I need to figure out who I am without you. I hope you find clarity too. Goodbye, Claire. As I closed the door behind me, I didn't look back. The weeks that followed were hard. There were moments when I doubted my choice, moments when I missed the comfort of what we had. But there were also moments of freedom, small victories that reminded me why I made this decision. I started journaling again, pouring my feelings onto the page. I took long walks through the city, savoring the fresh air and the chance to reflect. I reconnected with old hobbies, painting, reading, even trying a yoga class. Little by little, I began to feel like myself again. One day, while sitting in a park with my sketchbook, I realized something profound. Jake's betrayal had hurt me deeply, but it hadn't defined me. His choices weren't a reflection of my worth. I smiled at that thought, a genuine smile, one I hadn't felt in a long time. The future ahead felt uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt like my future. I didn't know what was waiting for me, but I was ready to embrace it. And as I walked home that evening, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a story I was writing for myself. Today, we explore an exciting story and learn useful expressions for your everyday life. Remember, learning English is like love. It requires patience, practice, and dedication. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Forget, every step is progress. See you in the next story.